How is code compiled in C Sharp?
Okay, so C Sharp, as we've already talked about, is a managed language. So it does compile a little differently than other languages, like unmanaged languages. So it compiles from the code that we as the programmers write down to an intermediary language, usually called IL.
Mm-hmm.
That IL is still human readable,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more like assembly language. It's more closer to the metal, so to speak.
Gotcha.
It's not usually meant to be read by humans.
So, well, first of all, C Sharp and VB, you can write them. They look different, but they will go down to the same IL.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about C Sharp and VB.NET. And, as a matter of fact, any .NET language.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually F Sharp. There's even like Python.NET and a few other ones that
Mm-hmm.
don't get near as much publicity. But all of them compile down to the same IL code. And it's actually impossible. I don't want to say impossible, but looking at the IL code,
Mm-hmm.
even as an expert in the matter, there's no way to look at that IL code and be able to tell for sure what language it came from.
Right.
There
Okay.
actually are a few little clues, but for the most part, you can't tell, and you could reverse, if you were so inclined, that IL code back to any language.
I'm trying to think. There are a few things in there that you might do differently in C Sharp, but it can compile down to the same IL card, like say a for or for each, or do or
Oh
do
yeah,
while. They'll kind of look the same, or
when
no?
they get to the IL
Yes,
code.
when they get to the IL code.
Um,
I know there's a few things I'm sure
yeah,
in
there's
there.
optimizations and things like that that the
Right.
compiler is really good at. The C Sharp compiler is just incredible
Mm-hmm.
for actually looking at your code, understanding what's going on, and compiling it down in a very optimized fashion.
I know there's a couple different ways. So if we do an if statement with some question marks, are we doing if statement there? Both. If you put them side by side, they're completely different. But when they get to the IL
Once
code,
they
they
get
look
to the
exactly
compiler,
the
it
same.
doesn't matter.
That's what I was
So,
trying to think
yeah,
of.
if you really want to get into the weeds, C Sharp runs through, it's not just a compiler, there's actually a series of steps that it runs through where it does pre processing, post processing, different optimizations. Eventually, it gets down to the IL code. And the IL code is what we actually, for the most part, the IL code is what gets distributed.
Right.
Um, at runtime, then we'll take it that extra step usually and take that IL code and go to native.
Yeah.
And that's where we convert it into the code that's actually going to hit the processor that's going to run. Um, but for the most part, the main thing for the interview question, really what they're trying to get at probably is that it compiles down to an IL intermediary language code. And then from there, it compiles to the native code.
And if you don't know anything about VB.net, you don't really need to know, but just know that it's a different. Both those languages go into the same way. It's a different way of writing .NET, and it's a different flavor, or
Flavor is a good word
I
for
guess
it.
flavor, because it's not a different language. I mean,
Well,
it
it
is
is
a
a
different
different
language,
language,
but they share a lot of the same thing. So I think it's just like, I mean, it's not like a different language in real life, but there's New Jersey and then there's Southern. They're both speaking English,
right.
but when you compile it down,
The idea was supposed to be that that they would be equal siblings. That anything you could do in
right,
one language, you could
could
do
do
in the other
another.
language, and for the most part, that's true.
But there are things that are not true, as in, I know C Sharp, I think capitalization matters, where
Yes,
VB.NET, it doesn't matter, does it?
that's correct. Which also causes a few. We're really getting into the weeds now, but
But yeah,
if you ever write something in C sharp and you compile it up, and then you want to import that into your VB program, it won't work if you give two objects the same, or two classes, for example, the same name that differ by capitalization.
right.
But assuming that everything is named correctly, it'll import over into .NET and you can consume it and use it.
So with this, I mean, so when they say, how is code compiled? I mean, the key parts of what they're looking for is, I think they're definitely looking for the intermediate language.
I think so too.
And I think a good thing to put in there is all VB, all of the .NET languages out there go down to the same thing as intermediate language, and then wrap us up. What else? Are they anything else in there that they need to know
No, I think
for
that's
that
pretty well
question?
it.
Yeah. So
Um,
But yeah,
Roslin's the current C#
a
compiler.
great keyword.
Roslyn is the
there.
current C# compiler, which is, like I said, is just awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching that video from F12 Programming. Please remember to like and subscribe. That does so much for us in the ratings. You have no idea. Also, don't forget to comment below. I hope you enjoyed, and good luck coding.